You're listening to the Modern Life Mystic Woman podcast, hosted by Jen and Taiha Lee.
Modern Life Mystic Woman started as a conversation about writing, dreaming, dating, magic, God, tarot, astrology, and our mutual passion for consciously creating both spiritually fulfilling and totally luxurious lifestyles.
We're all about living in alignment, being tapped in AF, and going all in on ascension. We're committed to intuition, inspiration, and creation.
We are the bold and the spiritual, and we're moving cosmic mountains together.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Modern Life Mystic Woman. Today we are talking about some getting into the sexy vibes. We're getting into how to increase your attractability, kind of doing some energy manipulation and, what we've been doing, but also just kind of touch base because I feel like it's been a little while since we've even filmed one. And yeah, I feel like to start off, I would love to get into kind of this shift out of the full moon, this past full moon, the full moon in, I'm forgetting now, wasn't it in Capricorn? Yeah, I feel like here in the US, it was July 4th. I feel like that was a really intense full moon for me. I feel like you and I both had really different experiences.
Yeah.
With the full moon. I feel like I went into full isolation mode. Even though I had plans to be social, Mother Nature decided to send Aunt Flo in to visit me that weekend. So I was definitely sitting in my feelings, but it was so great because once that kind of moved over me, I really got into that energy of kind of just really working on doing the work and feeling myself and really just dipping into that feminine, sexy vibes,
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it kind of all starts there with the full moon.
Yeah. And just letting all the things go that aren't contributing to that. And I think, from our new moon intentions before that about calling in love and getting into that feminine energy, it's then the full moon hits and it's oh yeah, all the stuff I have to let go of in order to actually be that.
I know. This one was intense for me. And I guess maybe I've been coming from a place where I've been way more in my masculine energy, or I don't know why that one was so, also I have 6 Capricorn placements. So
I was going to say, because you even have way more Capricorn than I do, but because we have all this Capricorn energy, we're going to feel it more.
Yeah, because that was a rough weekend for me, but it was more so just really releasing a lot of emotions. I had a lot of cries and a lot of stuff in regards to, I guess, love and relationships, and really feeling I feel like since we've started this podcast, our main thing has been feeling seen, which our last episode, and for those of you who don't know, we kind of film in spurts just because, we both have so much going on. So we do these recordings in spurts. So the one we had recorded, the last one we had released, the creative identity, was actually
probably 2 months ago almost.
Yeah, 2 months ago, which was so good. It's so much fun for us to re-listen to them too, because even hearing that, I'm oh my gosh, this was what I was feeling when we were recording this, and I had to get back into that flow state. And it was a lot about I feel like this last new moon, I set intentions of calling in that summer fling, calling in that kind of fun options and love. But yeah, in order to kind of make space for that, I was I really have to do some work in regards to, digging myself so that other people can dig me too.
Yeah. And I wonder if, because I actually just did all the prompts that you posted about the full moon. I actually just did them this morning. So it took me a little while. Yeah. And I was kind of thinking how, because we have all this Capricorn energy and it has so much to do with goals and career and everything, if that's even maybe why it like hit you a little bit harder, because it's like we've been talking about that so much of how do we balance the career and the all the stuff, like exciting stuff that we do, and like how do we balance that with like love and romance and a relationship?
Yeah. Or just, and like even re-listening to that last episode, I was like, oh my gosh, talking about like that magnetic, just really giving into that provocative energy and really allowing yourself to be that eccentric artist or that like passionate, chaotic person. It was so great to hear, because I was like, oh, I really need to incorporate that back into my life. Especially because, and then you posted on Instagram something about the social, what was it?
Oh yeah, social microdosing.
Social microdosing, because then you posted that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so accurate. So you'll have to explain that, because I was like, I was overwhelmed. Like I had been the most social I had been that week. So by the weekend, the full moon, I was like, I don't want to go out anymore. I don't want to see anybody. I want to sit home and cry because I'm just I was a mess. So then I woke up like after that and I was like, all right, you need to start doing the work. Like you need to start spending time, like taking time out of your day. And sometimes I feel like you can get so lazy when it comes to like, oh, I'm just going to think about it. I'm not going to take the inspired action necessary. But I was like, no, you need to do the daily routines, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Like I'll throw on some music. Like I made myself my little sexy playlist. Every night I'll put on like sexy clothes, and it could be when you start it could be so uncomfortable because you're like, and that kind of shows you where you're at with yourself, is like how uncomfortable you are putting on like lingerie and like dancing around your apartment and like doing this like sexy vibe, getting in front of the mirror and dancing. You could be like so uncomfortable, but that's part of doing the work, right?
I was just going to say that's so in alignment with the new moon women's circle that we did for Cancer season, with like tapping into the feminine energy and like the meditation that we did, and how it was harder for a few of the women to really tap into that. And it was kind of like, that shows you like where the work is and like why that area is kind of blocked. And so much of being in the feminine energy, and like this is all stuff I've had to like really practice in the last couple of years, is like we have to actually be open to receive, and so like that is a practice. It takes a lot of work.
And exuding sexuality without like feeling shame or feeling, feeling uncomfortable. Like I want to be comfortable being in that sexual energy to where I'm exuding that. Like I'm exuding that attractability. I'm not afraid to attract people in. And it's like, I figured like, I would love to do an episode on us talking about kind of like the fun little practices you can do, because I've been starting to incorporate, I do my like every night I do the little dances, and it's like, it's like now I kind of look forward to it, because I'm like, oh, now I get to dance, and I'll do it in the morning. I'll do it at night. I'll do it while I'm getting ready, because I'm just like, wow, this just makes me feel so much better and so much more comfortable in my own space and my own body. And kind of just allowing myself to get in that flow. Or even I go on my bike rides and I'll get like, I feel like I'm always somebody who needs to release energy. So for me, like riding on my bike, listening to fun music or listening to, poetry or something like that, it's just, what kind of sets you on fire? And I feel like go towards that.
Yeah. And like so much of being in the feminine is getting out of your head and into your body, which can be, I think that's why, especially like female entrepreneurs need a lot of help in this area, because like we're running our own businesses, we're having to think all the time, like we are having to make a lot of decisions. And so it is like really a conscious effort to like move from the mind into the body and make that a daily practice.
Yeah. And it's something I know I had been missing for a little while because it's a week. It's been I guess, yeah, it's been a week since I really implemented it. It seems so much longer. It seems so long ago that we did the new moon
Yeah. Oh my
stuff.
God.
I
But it
know.
was only like 3 weeks ago.
I know, but it feels so long ago. So it's like this week has like flown by, but at the same time moved so slow. And it's like, yeah, after a week, I already feel more powerful, more attractive. And, this weekend, I kind of gave myself set a 2 week intention. The full moon's coming up pretty soon, or the new moon is coming up on the 20th. So I had set like a 2 week intention of like every day for 2 weeks, because gosh, 2 weeks is such a, like, in this mode that we're talking about, the cancer new moon was how many weeks ago? Like, think about it. It's such a long period of time. It's been, what, 3 weeks? But still, so much can change in a matter of 3 weeks if you do the work. If you're still kind of stuck in that's kind of, I guess, those prompts that we use for the full moon, or the prompts that I had placed up there, which were like, what's changed for you? What have you mastered in the last 2 years? What have you done in the last 2 years? How's your life different? I love to set those for, like, the next new moon's coming. So the new moon in Leo. So it's like, what have you done since the last new moon? And it's like setting those 2 weeks, because I know I can make if I do this every day, I'll make the change within 2 weeks. I'll change my energy. And what better to go into like the new moon in Leo feeling
And
like,
I'm excited for this one.
Feeling like this, like, oh, just giving myself all this attention, feeling sexy and feeling like super attractive. So yeah, I'm excited for this new moon too.
Yeah. And that's kind of something else that I mentioned in that video with the social microdosing, is like the importance of setting intentions, because like you said, it's same thing. Like in a 2-week period, I'm really good at, if I have that intention of shifting my energy and knowing that the intention is set, but like the odd time that I might miss something, I just kind of like, I feel out of sorts. Like I'm not really myself, and I think that's just, as we're talking about self-care practices and getting in that sexy energy and that feminine energy, like that's why I do love moon intentions, because it's a feminine way of setting goals.
Yeah.
Without, and it kind of takes you out of that masculine way of thinking everything so like logical and linear. And it's just such a beautiful way to tap into that feminine, like magical energy too.
Yeah. And you're more in tune with nature versus being on these kind of constructed timelines of even, gosh, because like some days I really have, today I'm definitely having one of those days where I'm like, I don't know what day it is. I don't know what month it is. I don't know what I'm doing.
Which I kind of love, because, and this is so cool, kind of ties in how you took the dates off of your readings.
Yeah. Yeah. Which has been kind of awesome, because I'm definitely more in a flow and I'm not conscious of the time stuff. And it's really like last week I was very much so like 2 weeks. And that's the thing. That's how you're going to feel at the beginning. And when you're setting an intention and you're like really driving it home, it's like, okay, time to do my dance, like time to do this routine. And then you kind of start realizing this shift where it's just like you wake up and you're just kind of like, oh God, I look so good today. Damn, look at me. And then you just want to stand in front of the mirror and be like, oh, let me put on an outfit and go out. Like, let me draw myself up. And it kind of just is that unconscious shift to where, yeah, now I'm not here counting down the days. Like, all right, the new moon, But that's how it is. That's how it is whenever you're starting to implement a routine. So it's like you have to kind of force yourself. I guess that's that masculine energy that has to be like, no, you're You're doing the dance.
You're doing it. Yeah. Well, that's like, what was it? That was probably 6 weeks ago now or so. I think it was a couple full moons ago when, you kind of gave me the prompt of like, I want you to start putting attention on yourself. Like, stop making your writing about other people and really make it about you. And kind of tying into the last episode about creative identity and like being experimental and all of that stuff, and how like it's kind of coming full circle and we're like tapping into that energy again, but like needing that reminder from you to kind of hold me accountable, because at the beginning it felt really uncomfortable, and then it was like, okay, I'm committing to this like experiment for the next 2 weeks and just like focusing on myself. And so like having someone to hold you accountable can be really helpful too.
So good. I know, I've even noticed, because like now we've kind of stopped the coaching sessions, which it's like those kind of brought me back, which is so good, as to having a mentor or a coach, because those would kind of check me back into the week, like especially these times where, and I guess that's that kind of feminine masculine balance again, is like, you hear me now, I'm so in my feminine energy of being kind of up in the ethers and being kind of just like, let me do these astrological charts and let me do this and let me get here. And I'm like, oh my God, it's 5:00. What have I, like, where is the time gone? And then it's kind of like, you need that kind of person to hold you accountable. If it can't be yourself, 100% get a coach, because it's like those sessions that I would have with you, where on Wednesday I knew I was checking in and it was like, what are we doing from here to the next week? Like, what are we doing from here to the next week? And it's like, yeah, these 2-week periods, it's great. But yeah, I now, like, even doing this podcast right now, I'm like, wow, I've really shifted into feminine energy, because I'm just not on this like earthly plane. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the energy. It's wild.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
and it's kind of funny because that's what you wanted. You're like, I'm taking the dates off my reading. I don't want to be opted into this whole time thing. I just want to opt out. And it's like you're feeling like the contrast of that.
Yeah, and I've been because even like today, before we hopped on here, I was like, shit, I need to eat something. And it's kind of, that's just that, like, when you're in that flow state, it's like, but that's why it's so important for us to have that balance of like having that masculine energy inside of us to be like, come on, sit down, time to eat, like, time to do this. Okay, now you have to film your videos. Like, that's fun, all that stuff you're doing over there, but like, get to work.
You do need both. And it's interesting that you brought up that about our sessions, because that's one thing I really had to learn just in the way that I structure my business and the way that I work with clients. And it took me a bit to kind of really realize it, that like, oh, like all these, really like feminine, like female entrepreneurs that I'm working with, like, I need to hold the masculine container. Like, they're coming to me to kind of hold that masculine structure space of like, this is when we show up, this is the structure, this is how we're doing it, so that they can just kind of, be in that flow state. And like, it really is, it's so interesting how we do have to like learn how to be both of those sides, And then I think, bringing it back to like romance and relationships, I think that's when women get really tripped up about like manifesting whatever kind of man that they want, because if our masculine energy is still not, okay, like for example, I'll just be like really personal, like, 2 years ago, or like 2.5 years ago, when like I wasn't making a ton of money, my business wasn't like definitely like not doing as good as it is now. I just didn't have like the structure and like the stability and foundation that I truly wanted in life.
Yeah.
So what I desired and what I manifested in a man was like this super like alpha man, to come in and like take care of me and pay the rent and like do all the things. And though that was really cool and I manifested that, and it was like very like initiation to like my feminine energy kind of relationship. It really taught me how to receive. You know, it wasn't coming from a fully healthy place whatsoever, because I was like seeking from someone else what like I probably really wanted to learn how to give myself, you know?
Yeah,
And so like
totally.
now fast forward, and this kind of goes into actually like what your prompts were, like what were the intentions you set 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Now fast forward 2 years ago or 2 years, and it's like I'm living in like, you know, a beautiful $1 million plus like estate. My business is doing awesome. Like I'm full-time like writing remotely. Like I just have a really great life, you know?
Yeah.
And it's been so powerful to give myself that. So then now as I like manifest a romantic partner, it's going to be someone that like matches that versus like me requiring that from someone else.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, because it's funny. 2 years ago, same situation. Um, yeah, I had, well, first it was kind of 2.5 years ago, because when I had just finished playing golf, and this was like, I was traveling probably 30 weeks out of the year, maybe
Oh,
34.
wow.
Yeah, I was gone all the time.
Oh my God.
So there was like no stability in my life. And if I were
Mm.
home and I met somebody, it'd be like I'd be on the road for 5 weeks after that. So they'd just be like, well, I found somebody else. So it
Yeah.
was just kind of like, once I stopped playing golf and I was like, I just want stability. Like I want some kind of stability in my life, like this lifestyle for me, which is kind of funny considering like knowing myself now. But for a while I was like, this is just too much for me. And it's funny because I started manifesting all these stable men. Like when I had made that
Mm.
decision, I was like, I want more stability in my life. I started manifesting these like stable men, you know, with
Mhm.
stable jobs, stable careers. Because before I was dating guys like me who were professional athletes all over the place, and it was like incorporating more chaos into my life.
Mhm.
And then I started manifesting these guys who were like, you know, had like stable jobs, and I was kind of like, okay, so then it was like a little too stable. So then it's kind of been interesting to see that evolution, kind of like how you say, it's like I was attracting that because that's what I craved. And
Mm.
then in the last 2 years that I've kind of built my life to where I can kind of have that, you know, I'm not traveling 30 weeks out of the year anymore, but at the same time, I still need a little bit of that like unpredictability in my life. So I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily attracting men now who are like, you know, super rigid. And I feel like, yeah, I noticed that in my relationships that like, okay, here I am with this stable, committed man, but I'm like, all right, what's next? What are we doing? Where are we going? And they're like, I have to work. I'm like, oh,
Right?
yeah. So it's funny because I had a girlfriend who was telling me, she's like, I won't be with this guy. Like, I won't commit to him or I won't marry him until he is stable. He's self employed. And she's like, I want a guy who's stable. And I kind of like threw that on her. I was like, or
Mm.
do you feel like you're unstable? Like maybe you
Mm.
have to be the one to lead that. You know, are you looking for that because it's something that you feel like you lack, you know? Cuz like she's been dating
Yeah.
this guy forever, but she's like, I don't like that his job's unstable. I'm like, or do you not like that your job's unstable?
Right? We
Yeah.
we constantly have to ask ourselves that.
Yeah, but I do think I like attract men who like bring some kind of structure into my life, because if not, I'm like just I can get
Mm.
lost in like what today the last 24 hours I've been on this astrology chart kick where I've just been like learning how to read astrology charts and just finding out all this past life stuff and vertexes and asteroids. And I'm just like, oh my God, I've been doing it for all my friends. And yeah, it's just like I got swept away, but I love it because I'm like, who else's job would let them just kind of goof around for a day? Even though I don't feel
Right?
like that's goofing around, since it's still in my realm of like something that would be really beneficial for me to know how to do.
Yeah.
But still, like the fact that I just feel so grateful some days that have that flow, that I get to like learn new things, go different places, and just have that freedom, you know?
I know. I had like such a moment of gratitude today when I was doing those prompts. And I was just even thinking where I was a year ago. And I was like,
Yeah.
had a major dark night of the soul this time last year. And yeah, like asked for a business investment, and to really, I was like, okay, enough is enough. I got to really like turn things around. And just to really see what I've done in a year of just like fully, and I think that's the key to manifesting anything, is like making the decision, you know?
Yeah.
And like for me, that took like completely moving away and going really remote and just taking away all distractions. But
Yeah.
I think like, yeah, like I'm just so grateful for like this life that I've created. And, you know, it's cool
Mm-hmm.
because like we kind of mirror that in each other too.
Yeah.
And I just think like it's so, you know, and weaving this into the feminine energy stuff, like it's so worth it to create your own business in this way,
Totally.
because like we don't have to work on our periods, we don't have to work on the
Mm-hmm.
moon cycles, like we can take all this time off, we can binge watch or read astrology stuff all day, we can take a day off. Like yesterday we were supposed to record and I
Yeah.
was like, you know what, I really need a full day just to like be in the house by myself.
Yeah.
And I like put on lingerie and just like was with myself all day long, you
Yeah.
know? And the fact that we've created these lives is like because we decided to, you
Yeah.
know?
And it's really getting to create, and I always say this, but it's like creating magic. Even when even doing something like sitting around the house in lingerie, it's magical because it's like you're creating that energy for yourself. You're creating that, and it allows to have those moments of gratitude. And it's like gratitude is what's going to, I mean, transform your life. Honestly, gratitude will transform your life. Because it's like having those moments, and they come like, there's like, I think I call them like moments of oneness, when I'm like
Mm,
on my bike or something and I'm just like, how could I ever ask for more than what I have now? Like, how could, like, there's not a bone in my body that needs more than just this wind hitting my face. I live in a beautiful place. I'm seeing this water. I'm having these moments. And it's like, even when you're sitting at home in your lingerie or working in sweatpants, I don't know what, but like just feeling this immense gratitude. And I do feel like in my prompt for that full moon, where I was like, what have I mastered in the last 2 years? For me, it was this gratitude as well for like, I kind of manifested my ideal relationship within my work, in the sense
mm,
of like the universe is like my ideal partner, because I live in my fantasy world, and I just create, help people, like help do what I love to do. And then the universe just shows up for me and is like, don't worry, I got you, babe.
yeah,
I
I
got you.
love
Like,
that.
I'm going to, here's money, here's you, like, survive. Like, gee, you just keep doing your thing, you know? So it's like, it takes that pressure off of me. Like, I just know the man that I call in is going to be incredible, because I've already taken the pressure off of him to,
Right?
you know, to behave in that way, because it's just like, that's something that energetic minimum. And let me tell you something, that's something I had to reconnect with, because there was like a week or two there before the full moon where I was entertaining some stuff that I kind of had a moment where I'm like, oh girl, you got to start doing the work, because your energetic minimum is very low.
Mm,
Like, and then I had that full moon kind of prompt where I was like, oh wow, so if the universe is here, like, I got you, girl. Like, okay, girlfriend, like, where do you think that it's okay for a man to treat you this way? And sometimes, it's kind of facing those harsh truths and being like, well, I got to do the work. I got to do the work. Even if it's getting in some lingerie, getting in like some cute clothes and dancing in front of your mirror, or just dancing around a house and like feeling sexy, eating sexy foods. Gosh, just having like sexy evenings, like lighting some candles, just creating that vibe that like just allows somebody to come into that space,
Yeah.
And it's like that whole process of falling in love with yourself.
Yeah.
Or like,
absolutely.
because it feels like long ago, but I was like, it was long ago. It was long ago. I'm about to write a novel. It was long ago that we had a conversation where I was like, oh my gosh, I was looking at something and then this memory popped up of me with this guy who was like the first guy that I had like such a strong, like intense connection with that I've honestly never gotten over. And I was like, here I am trying to move on, send like messages to my future self, and this picture pops up. But that was kind of like, I digged into that and I was like, oh my gosh, I looked at myself in that photo. I wasn't even focused on him. I'm like, damn, look how good I looked. But then I remembered like part of what I loved so much about that connection was how much like how good he made me feel about myself, or how much he highlighted certain qualities of myself that I was like, wow, I need to fall in love with myself again.
I love that you said that, because I think it can be really important to know like what our love languages are and how we receive love, how we want to be loved, and like if we can give ourselves more of that. So for me, like words of affirmation are top for me, and then quality time is kind of right below that. They're pretty much tied. So even I'm thinking like, what you just said, and then like the words of affirmation, like for me, I do a lot of mirror work. So I'll just like sit in front of the mirror and I'll be like, I just love you so much. Like, you're so beautiful. You're doing such a good job. Like, just really say those things to myself. And then, so then I also know, say if I'm not getting that from a man or a person I'm interested in, then I can kind of like, because I think when you don't know that, like maybe you're really interested in a person, or maybe like, and you can tell they're interested in you, but like something's off, or you're feeling like your needs aren't being met. I think maybe when you know those love languages, then you can also be like, oh, like this is the part that's missing, and this is what's actually going to make me open up. And then if we can start giving that to ourselves. Yeah. Like even I think for you, what your top one is physical touch, isn't it?
Quality time and physical touch. They're like tied.
Yeah.
So
even
the dancing with like the like touching and feeling myself kind of helps me.
Right? Yeah.
And just getting used to, because it's like, if you're not comfortable in your own body, I'm not going to be comfortable with somebody else touching me. So it's about, I need to exude that. And I feel like I'm very like like because of the physical touch, I'm very like sensual. So it's about reconnecting with that part of myself. And that's what I enjoyed about that guy, was we had such a strong, like, I don't know, sensual connection, in the way that like he really opened me up to like this whole new side of myself, that I was just like in love with myself.
Yeah.
And it was like, I like, did I love him? I don't know. I think I loved how he viewed me.
I love that.
Or like he introduced me to myself.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like,
yeah, it's so interesting too, because like for the last couple of years, I've been like refining the process of like manifesting a man or a relationship, and when I started this like 2.5, well, actually I started even way longer, probably 10 years ago, I did it for the first time. And that's how I like manifested my fiance way back. We're not together anymore, obviously. But I had like 5 qualities that I wanted in a man, and like got those. And then that relationship ended. I did the process again and I was like, all right, I'm going deep with this. So I wrote out like 30 qualities.
Yeah.
And he showed up like within days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But this is what I noticed. And so I've really refined the process since. Even though he was like all of those qualities, I felt I did not feel the way I wanted to feel in the relationship. The relationship didn't feel very secure. It was like, oh, he was all these things, but the frequency of the relationship didn't feel good. So kind of just based off what you said of like, you were in love with the version of yourself. Like now when I've refined this process, I always start with like, how do you feel in your ideal relationship? And then how does
so good.
Right. And then it's
so
like,
good.
What are you doing? How are you being? And then like, so start with yourself. And then the second part is like, what's the frequency of the relationship itself? So then you're like tapping into the entity of like this thing, the union. And then maybe like the third step is like, you know, having a few qualities that like maybe you want the man to have. But I think, you know, and that's something, you know, that you've also really helped me tap into is just like really focusing on like
on
yourself, on you.
And that's like, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel that's what inspired me to even be like, okay, start doing the work, because it's like, you're doing a great job of manifesting these men, but then you're like afraid. You're afraid to be in the connection or to be seen in the way you want to be seen, because you're not doing the work on yourself. You're working so hard on focusing on calling in this specific type of man. But then the beauty of it is as you go work, because everybody's just an expression of us, right? Everybody's just a mirror of ourselves. So it's kind of funny. The more I work on myself, the more certain people start to shift around me. And I'm like, oh, do I feel something there? Because it's like something's awakened in me that I'm just effortlessly incorporating into like my interactions. That's awakening something in another person that's kind of like, oh, I never saw this side to Jen before. Like, maybe I'm interested in her. And that's how it starts. Like, you start doing the work on yourself. And that's what I'm kind of doing. It's like, I don't want to just call in one person. I'm like, I want to have fun. Like, let's call in some options. Options, universe. And then, so it's kind of like, you know, I've had enough guys have to like pick and choose over me. I was like, I want to pick and choose now. So it's kind of like me focused on me, and I'm going to call in all those options. And it already happens. Like within a week, I start seeing like, you know, they start slowly coming out. Within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, forget about it. But see, that's how you have to focus on you.
Yeah. And you have to be so confident in like, well, of course they're showing up. Like if that's the other part of manifesting is like, you make the decision, you do the work, and then you have that certainty of like, well, of course.
Yeah. And that's like that energy manipulation, right? Like you can literally manipulate your energy. It's so interesting. And I'm going to incorporate, because I've been on this astrology chart binge. So it was interesting because that guy who I had that intense connection with, his Venus was in my first house, which was my ascendant sign, which means like I was just his ideal. Like I was his type, and like his purpose in my life
was what, Sagittarius for you, right?
Yeah, I'm Sagittarius. So his Venus was Sagittarius, and he was it like, so for me, my outward appearance, which it's kind of funny because then I was reading into it and it was like, it doesn't even matter how you look. It's the energy you possess and your mannerisms and your way of being is you're this person's type. Like you are just who this person likes. And there's obviously a lot of other like synastries in our chart, but I thought that one was really interesting because it was the concept of like, I look so and like where I would get caught up comparing myself is I was like, I looked so different from all his other girls to where I was just like, did he like, was I just not his type? But it was actually, and he always communicated to, like, he was like, always communicative to me. Like, I think part of our karma was, according to the charts, was that, you know, he was supposed to make me feel really good about myself. And then, so it's kind of interesting because it's like, yeah, he always communicated like this strong interest in me, but I thought he was lying. And that just
Right.
reflects to me where I was mentally and where, I want to believe that like, oh, I got it going on. And that's the energy you're bringing. Doesn't matter what you look like. Maybe the planets have something to do with it, but at the same time, it's like the energy.
Yeah.
The energy that you're bringing, like, and sometimes when things are like meant to click, they're meant to click. I feel like, yeah, because reading the chart stuff has been like putting things so much in perspective for me.
Yeah, it is so interesting when you do learn about all that stuff. It's like you just
Yeah.
can't really deny it.
Yeah.
And it just makes your life so much easier. Like if you can know this information. Like I remember saying to someone a while ago, like I think when you like go through a breakup or something, or and you're like, or even like a friendship breakup, whatever it might be, like you can kind of feel like, oh my God, like I'm never gonna be with a person like that again, or there was just something so special about that connection. But I think if you kind of know their chart and you can see, oh, it was these qualities, and like their numerology chart as well, which is like super accurate for me, then you can start to see like, oh, it's actually just like these frequencies that I'm attracted to. And there's a lot of other people that have those same frequencies.
Well, and there's so many placements that can happen multiple times. Like if your seventh house is big. If your Venus is in somebody's seventh house, or like Mars in seventh house or fifth house, it's going to symbolize that there's a potential for marriage there, or there's a partnership. But there's so much that goes into it.
What's the seventh house?
The seventh house is like marriage and partnerships.
Always marriage. Okay.
So his Venus was in my seventh house. So I was, of course, like very much so like that marriage thing was there. And then it was interesting because it was like, if it ends open-ended, you are potentially like, neither one of you will ever be able to release the connection. I was like, oh, so that's why I'm still so caught up in that one.
Yeah.
Like it'll haunt you. I was like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does give you this clarity of like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. It's not me, it's the stars.
Well, I don't know if it's for sure. I'm pretty sure maybe it's my seventh house, because I know the one that always talks about marriage for me is in Aries. And it always talks about how like I'll probably have like two main relationships, and I'll most likely like marry into money, or like in like prestige. Like that's something that continues to come up in like my first.
Oh, that might be your part of fortune.
Oh, okay. So like,
I think mine's in Aries as well.
Okay. Something was, to do with like fortune and marriage, and Aries was in there.
I'll have to look up, because I know a couple of the asteroids. I'll have to look up your chart. Eventually I'm gonna, like, I'm trying to practice now so that I can do this for real, because it's just so interesting, so fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think it can also, like, for me, when I, read about that, it made a lot of sense to me, because that's always something, like, not even from like an ego place, but just something I've always really felt. And like, even, my ex, who I was with for a long time, like his family owned a golf course, so we kind of have that, you grew up on a golf course, and like I lived on their 200-acre property, like on the golf course for like quite a while. And there was that sort of sense of like prestige, and I've always felt very strongly that like I am meant to like really like work and collaborate with my like husband, whoever that's going to be, and like have this sort of like
so
empire.
We have the same one, because that's what I was looking at mine this morning, and it said you will most likely marry somebody that you will end up working and becoming very successful with. So I was like,
right. And it's so helpful, because it's like, oh, that's not just my imagination wanting that. It's like there's something within me that it's, and maybe that's getting into the time travel, or being able to like have like premonitions of what's to come. It's like, no, part of me just knows that that's like my destiny. And so I'm kind of like,
navigating that. Yeah. So definitely fun. We'll have to do a whole episode on like the chart reading once I get like expert status. this because
totally. It's so interesting.
It's so interesting. And like, maybe we'll do like a fun one where we break down our charts. But yeah, I guess to wrap this one up, it's just, get into those vibes and kind of really taking the time to work on yourself these next 2 weeks. By the time this comes out, I think it will be the new moon.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to say is like, I kind of touched on it before, but especially, I mean, whatever kind of work that you do as a woman, but especially if you're running your own business, and if you read any like feminine energy kind of stuff, it'll tell you this, but like, say you are dating or you're in a relationship and like you're going out with your man or whatever, really giving yourself some time and space in between work and romance to shift over from like your head space to like your heart and body. So like, say, you know, you, whether you go to a job or like you're working from home like us, and then you have a date that night or something, like really giving yourself like, you know, a couple hour, like, you know, depending on how much time you have, but realistically, if you really want to get into that feminine energy, giving yourself like 2 hours of like, okay, I'm like, work is done. I'm going to spend like 2 hours just feeling sexy, put on some music, light some candles, have a shower or a bath, and really like get into your body and into that feminine energy and just give yourself that space and time. Because if you are still operating from your headspace when you go on that date, like that's going to repel him.
Oh yeah, that's so good. That's so good.
Because he's in his head, you know? And then even if so then the other thing, if it doesn't repel him, it's actually going to put him into a feminine energy, which is then going to repel you and you're not going to be into it. So, and this is the really cool thing is we have so much control over our own energy. Like oftentimes we can want to be like, oh, he needs to change X, Y, and Z. So I'll feel this way. But we can just like tweak our energy and then it makes him like rise into his masculine energy. Like if we just kind of like lean back and soften and that
one's so good too. Cause I try and put on music beforehand, but I know I'm like overthinking, overanalyzing. Maybe that's the Virgo in me. That's just like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Like wanting to be really like calculated. Yeah. And then I end up just acting like weird and awkward.
Right.
That one's like something that I need to practice. But I think that goes along with me doing the work every day to where I feel confident enough in myself and my own body and being to where I'm not thinking like, oh my God, like, how do I look? Like, what am I doing? And just like flow.
Yeah.
You know, because that's so true. You have to like start doing the work way before. It's like a golf tournament. Like when I think about golf, I'm like, yeah, I had to practice way before the actual tournament. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah. I love that.
So practice like being on the date way before the date comes to the point where it's like just natural to you. Yeah. I love that.
Oh, this is so good.
I know. That
is I can't
really
wait to
good.
hear what people think about this one.
I know. So I guess we'll wrap this one up though, even though we've just hit goldmine. But our next week's episode is going to be all about getting ready to be ready. So we will continue this conversation. So you guys have homework this week.
Yeah, I love it.
Find out the love language and then kind of provide yourself with that. So yeah, hope everybody enjoyed this episode and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow us over on Instagram at Modern Life Mystic Woman, where we're sharing inspirational writing and magical lifestyle tips on the daily.
And if you loved this show, let us know. Subscribe, comment, shoot us a DM, you know, whatever your style, and make sure to share it with all your spiritual besties.
See you next time.